thanks very much to Task for inviting me here today to say a few words on the theme of the role of Dublin, of city planning and diversity in economic renewal. I suppose there's a growing consensus that cities are critical to economic growth and economic recovery in the new knowledge economy. And there's also a growing consensus that Dublin is the national economic engine, that it will be the engine of renewal for the Irish economy. And I suppose it's also critical to, when we realise that we're living in an increasingly globalised economy, that countries don't necessarily compete with one another, it's cities that compete with one another. So Google, for example, or Facebook, or whoever they are looking at places like Tel Aviv or Amsterdam or whatever to locate their headquarters. So it's not Dublin versus Cork, it's not a zero-sum situation, it's not Dublin versus Athlone, it's Dublin versus Amsterdam. And there's an increasing consensus as well that to be a globally competitive city, you have to have a sufficient scale. And Dublin is actually at the very lower level of that scale, depending where you put the boundary of the metropolitan region. It's either 1 million or 1.6 million, but that barely gets us in to the OECD study, for example, on competitive cities in a global economy. So Dublin, in that sense, is critical. And when we're talking about Dublin and we're talking about cities, obviously city planning is critical in that economic sense. And what planning can do is that it can promote economic growth, it can promote investment, public and private, and it can optimise the benefits of that public and private investment. Of course, it can do all the opposites. It can hinder economic growth, it can hinder public and private investment, and it can hinder the benefits that will flow from, for example, investment in public infrastructure like a very good metro system or whatever. And the third thing then that I just want to talk about, because I suppose it's intimately connected with cities. Cities throughout history are by nature diverse. It's places where people escape from or to perhaps seeking greater freedom, greater dignity, greater respect and greater equality. And there is an increasing recognition that diverse, equal-based, tolerant, open cities, that can drive economic growth, can drive innovation, it's good for entrepreneurship. And that those qualities in a city can be a competitive advantage. And just to use one example, if you ever listen to when the IGA is announcing the latest foreign direct investment, and they're saying that this company, whatever it is, LinkedIn, for example, that they're locating their EMEA headquarters or their global headquarters in Dublin. One of the things they say is one of the advantages for them is our multicultural, multilingual population, because they need people to attract people to come here, to work here, who are native speakers of Arabic or Hebrew or of whatever language that they're relating, whichever country that they're servicing. And those people have to be happy living here. Those people, we have to retain them, and that sense that it is a multicultural, equal and open city. Just to talk a bit briefly about the problems that I think that saying that the city is important for economic growth, but then looking at what the issues are. The urban bias in Ireland, and I think that we don't value our cities, we don't value Dublin in particular. I think there's an anti-development mindset, a kind of a narrowly defined, just purely anti-development. And there's a very interesting Harvard economist who maybe I'll get to speak later on about, Edward Glaser, who's written a brilliant book on the city and on its economy. It's called The Triumph of the City. And he says most people who fight to stop a new development think of themselves as heroes, not villains. Because if you think about it in a city, say for example an office block, that's an employment. That's where people work. And that's development. So like development is also where you live. You live in an apartment, you live in a house. That's development. You go to the cinema, that's development. You go to a restaurant or a cafe, that's development. Like, development it's essential for us, for our quality of life and for our economy. And there's also, I think, a very simplistic anti-developer mindset, and because I think that developers are entrepreneurs, they're businessmen, and they're like all the rest of us, they're good, bad and indifferent, and there are some very good developers, and I think a kind of I suppose it's a kind of a prejudice about developers and paint them all with the same brush. That's no solution. That's no way to get us out of the economic recession that we're in, or it's no way to make sure that we're going to have a world-class, first-class Dublin. I think some of the things too is that we, to value. There's some people talk about the selfishness of the boom, and I don't really agree with that. And people talk they're anti-consumerist and so on. I think that a lot of that prosperity is good for people. Ireland had poverty long enough, and I think that prosperity is good for the quality of people's lives and for the quality of our city. There's particular 2 minutes. Okay. There's particular things about the inner city that I think we're going to have to sort out. If anybody wanders around Dublin can see that there are huge numbers of still derelict sites even after the boom, and that's a big problem for us. But it's also a huge opportunity, because for some of our competitor cities, their city centres are fully developed. So, for example, if we want to attract international students, if we want to attract international colleges to locate here, we have a great competitive advantage, because they can locate right in the city centre, say between Docklands and Houston, because there's a lot of land there. And that idea of problems actually can be opportunities if we get our planning policies right, if we get our investment policies right, so that those areas can be the source of new employment for the city. I think I'll probably just finish on that. Okay, thank you.